Serving as a segue between college life and civic life, New St. Andrews Civics Club operates under the college's mission to graduate leaders who shape culture, living faithfully under the lordship of Jesus Christ. Civics Club has two purposes: to understand our place as Christians in our community, and to understand the structure of how our government works. We focus more on governmental structure than on issues, knowing that those who understand the mechanics of how our American system functions are in a much better position to engage with the issues. The intention for this forum is to provide an opportunity for the candidates to describe their proposed policies and beliefs to the voters. It is not the purpose to attack any candidates for their views. The invitation to the event was extended to all candidates for District 6 seats for the Idaho legislature. The 3 Democratic candidates were unable to attend. At this time, I would like to invite the candidates and the panelists on stage. Please be seated behind your name cards. They are in alphabetical order by last name. I'd like to welcome Senator Dan Foreman, Representative Lori McCann, and Representative Brandon Mitchell. Thank you to our panelists, Jack Landis, Eleanor Murphy, and Paul Merle. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for self-introduction and a total of 3 minutes per response to answer questions from the panelists. Our timekeeper is Louis Stalby, seated here in the second from the front row. When the speaker's time begins, Louis will uphold the green card. When the speaker has 1 minute remaining, he will hold up the yellow card. And when the speaker has 10 seconds remaining, he will hold up the red card. Welcome to all of you, our candidates. One final time, we are glad to have you here. Thank you for coming. We will begin the 2-minute introductions with Senator Dan Foreman.
You guys hear me okay? It's working all right? Well, thank you for the invitation. Thank you to our host. It's always a pleasure to come here. I have always enjoyed this forum, and I'm sure today will be no exception. I am Dan Foreman. I'm your senator for District 6. I'll give you a little bit of a bio here real briefly. I live out in the Viola Potlatch area with my wife, who's right there in the third row. And I've been in uniform and been a public servant most of my life, over 46 years of public service at federal, state, and local levels of government. I'm a retired third-year Air Force officer, combat vet, aviator, former commercial pilot. I'm also a retired Moscow PD officer. And I'm a Christian conservative Republican. I tell people that because that's what I am. Now, I realize that's not popular with everybody, but so be it. That's what I am, and I think it's important that you know that. The 3 things I want to do on my to-do list for next session are, number 1, I want to bring back my pro-life bill. I introduced a bill last session to try to close the 2 loopholes in our otherwise really good pro-life laws. In other words, I want to close the loopholes for abortion and incest, rape and incest. It's a contentious issue, but all lives are sacred, they're precious, and there's absolutely no reason to extinguish a human life because of the heinous acts of someone else. And somebody needs to stand up and speak for the unborn child. So I'll do that. I also want to call for an investigation into what the state of Idaho government did and didn't do during COVID. I'm going to introduce a patient bill of rights to protect all of us when we go for health care. But thanks again for the invitation. Glad to be here.
Thank you, folks, for putting this on. Elizabeth Landis, thank you so much. And panelists, thank you. So my name is Lori McCann. I'm from Lewiston, down the hill just a bit. Have lived there for a half a century. So this gray hair has been earned. My husband and I, we run some small businesses, including a cattle ranch. I drive a semi-truck. I haul cattle and hay up and down the highway. And we also, he's a lawyer by practice, so I have ran his law practice for over 45 years. And together we have 4 wonderful kids and 11 grandkids. So family is extremely important. Another part of my background is I taught at Lewis Clark State College, running the paralegal and legal assistant programs there for almost 16 years. So I have an education background, I have an ag background, and a business background that I bring to the table to represent this district, which all 3 of those areas are extremely important for District 6. So I have been honored to represent you, and I will be honored to represent you again in the next 2 years. Just a little bit more. I was born in Oregon, in Milwaukee. My father was a football coach and a high school government, and basically a political scientist. And so we learned a lot about government and what was important. And so I can thank my Father in heaven that that is probably one of the biggest pushes on why I ran. So thank you.
So my name is Brandon Mitchell. I'm the current representative for this district. And thank you all for coming out. This is so good to see so many people. This is probably the best attended forum that we've had so far. So we appreciate that. We live in a world today that is, it's heading down a road that's really got me concerned. And that's why I got into politics in the first place. I seen what was happening at the national level and figured, you know what, I have to actually do something at the state level or somewhere in local. Or I couldn't complain about what was going on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about me and who I am. I married my wife straight out of high school. We've got 3 kids. One of them is our biological kid, and then we've got a foster daughter and an adopted daughter. Foster care is really important to me, and that's one of the things that's driven me in the legislature is really trying to take care of the kids. I believe in that, and so that's been a big push that I've had. We've got 5 or 6 grandkids now. We just, my son just adopted another one, so we've got 6 grandkids. So it's been an awesome being a grandpa. Couple of things that I've really focused on is I focused on voter laws, protecting your vote. I think it's important that we protect your vote. We took care of some voter ID when I first got in. My biggest concern was that we could go and actually register to vote with a scuba diving card and Amazon box. I'm thinking that's not okay. So it took me a little while to get the right bill through, but we ended up getting that through in 2023, and I'm just excited that we were able to do that. So it made a big impact to, like I said, protect your vote. I believe in protecting your freedoms, and that's one of the biggest keys that I'm there for is to protect your freedoms and focus on the constitutionality of the bills that we see. When I see a bill come across my desk, I've got 3 C's that I look at. Is it constitutional? Is it what my constituents want or need? And can my conscience live with it? And if it can't pass those 3, then I can't vote in favor of it. And so that's kind of where I stand on things. And I look forward to the questions. 2 minutes goes pretty quick. So, but thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, candidates. So our first question will begin with Senator Foreman. The question is, in your opinion, what was the best and worst bill that the legislature passed during the 2023 session?
Okay, in my opinion, the best bill was House Bill 71, Vulnerable Child Protection Act. And it basically says that until you reach the age of 18, you can't be subjected to any of these gender changing medical operations. You can't be given the hormone drugs and other medications that try to delay puberty or transition you from one gender to the next. It provides for a penalty, because it's a felony, to violate this law of up to 10 years in prison. And the victim, the child, can also civilly pursue a $5,000 award from the courts. as a victim. I was co-chair of the Judiciary and Rules Committee, and I co-sponsored that bill. And it was absolutely necessary to do something to protect our kids. What they were doing to these kids is against the laws of God and against the laws of common sense, and now it's against the law of man, thanks to our bill being passed. So I'm very proud of the fact that we're able to stand up to this terrible trend in society and protect our kids. One of the worst bills was House Bill 24, which is the Idaho Launch Grant Program. Folks, it's not the government's job to give you something for nothing. It's not my job as a legislator to give you $8,000 to go to a post-secondary education institute. That's a private sector decision. If you wish to pursue that, then you should pay for it or get someone else to pay for it, but not the taxpayer. So I voted against that. Basically what that bill did was give anybody who graduates from high school an $8,000 opportunity to go spend it on a vocational training school or a community college. I'm all for education, but the ends don't justify the means. It's not the taxpayer's responsibility to pay for that. Now, what this really translated to was a private industry transferring its employee education and training costs onto the taxpayer. And quite frankly, there was some political payback involved in this. I don't say this with any animosity, but I'll tell you the truth. A lot goes on in the political world, and this bill was actually payback for support that was given to certain people in the executive branch. And it should be unconstitutional, and hopefully we can reverse this because it is not a proper use of taxpayers' money. Education is great, but if you want it in post-secondary, you need to pay for it like any other product.
So this question, thank you. I think the best bill that we got passed for me was House Bill 406, and this was the fentanyl bill. I was one of 35 other representatives and 15 senators who sponsored and co-sponsored this bill. What it did was it made fentanyl part of the dangerous drugs in the classification of what would or would not be allowed to use for minimum sentencing. And some of the judges that I met with prior were skeptical. And they said, we don't like minimum sentences. We like to be able to look at a situation, and each case is a little different. But with this fentanyl bill, and we all know how much fentanyl has come across the southern border, even our northern borders. And so we had to take a hard look at this. And so I helped champion that bill, and I was very proud that we got that passed. In addition, part of that bill also had a section in there that was for drug-induced homicide. And so very important, again. The worst bill that I felt that we brought, and again, it was on cannibalism. And I asked the sponsor of the bill, I said, is cannibalism a problem in the state of Idaho? And she nonchalantly said, oh, no, it's not, but it might be. And I said, you know, the reason I voted no, not is because I was hungry and wanted to chew on my arm, but I'll tell you, I got really tired of having to fight against or to say, why are we wasting the taxpayer dollars on looking at bills that are absolutely ridiculous? And so it passed the House. It did not pass in the Senate, and I was happy that we moved on. So those were the two that I will talk about. There's a lot of really good ones, but thank you.
So if anybody follows politics here in Idaho, you'll probably know that my favorite bill in 2023 was actually House Bill 340. I talked about it a little bit in my opening, and that was the bill that actually secured your vote. We made the changes that needed to be made, and we actually made it so that every form of registering to vote has the same requirements. And so it requires that you show who you are so you can actually verify you are where you're at. It requires that you actually tie yourself to an actual place here in Moscow or in Lewis County or wherever you might be, so that you're voting in the right precinct. And so I think that was probably the best bill, and that was House Bill 340. I actually sponsored that one, got it through, got it across the line. Governor signed it. So that's probably the best one. The worst one, I kind of pulled a little bit on that because I agree with I was really struggling with the launch program. A couple of different reasons, but I still struggled with it. And one of the biggest reasons I struggled with the launch program was because we gave the workforce development the ability to make law, and they're not elected officials. And I don't believe that the workforce development should be making policies that are acting as law, because they don't have anybody to be held accountable to, which is you, the people. But I think the other ones that, and I'm just going to be kind of broad on this, is all the spending bills. We had a lot of spending bills that we spent a lot of different money that shouldn't have been spent. And so I think those were some of the biggest concerns that I had. We're trying to rein in government a little bit and make sure that we're spending your money wisely. I think that if when we're sitting there looking at funding bills, if we're looking you in the eye, knowing it's your money, we're going to be a lot more cautious about what we're doing. And so that's what I try to do while I'm out there.
All right. And our second question is, in your opinion, what was the best bill that did not pass and why? Starting with Senator Foreman.
Thank you. The best bill, in my opinion, that didn't pass because it couldn't even get a hearing in state affairs was a bill that I wrote. The words life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness come to mind. You know, there are words over the lieutenant governor's podium on the floor of the Senate where we gather every day to hash out legislation, and those words go, "In God we trust." Well, then why don't we act like it in the Idaho legislature? And I'll tell you exactly what I mean. I tried to get a hearing on a bill that would have saved the lives of countless children over the years. Children who can't speak for themselves, the innocent unborn. I couldn't even get a hearing from those conservative, Republican, church-going people. And I'll tell you why. They're not bad people. They didn't refuse to hear my bill because they're evil or they want to kill babies, although that's the net result of their inaction. It's because they want to get reelected. It's because it's politics. Well, folks, when are we going to stop with that? I was elected to protect your God-given constitutional rights, inalienable rights. No one can take those away from you. Well, how do you exercise your constitutional rights as an unborn baby if somebody decides to terminate you? It's wrong. It's immoral. It's against the laws of the Creator. It should be against the laws of all mankind. It's a scourge on humanity. I've heard every excuse in the world to justify abortion. It's all a bunch of bunk. If we don't value human life, what does that say about our society? Now, Idaho is better than a lot of other states. I'll give us that much credit. But I'm going to bring that bill back again, and I'm going to keep beating on that door until it opens. I'll get a hearing, and I'll be very forceful in that hearing. It boils down to this. If you're a sitting legislator, how can you turn your back on God's law? Thou shalt not kill innocent unborn babies? We're better than that. At least I hope we are. So I'm going to bring it back. But in my opinion, that was the most important piece of legislation that I worked on the whole session. Nothing is more sacred than human life. And if we don't stand up to this challenge, well, it's going to leave a sad tale years down the road when people try to explain that failure. So I'll bring it back again. Wish me luck on it. Hopefully, we'll have a better result next session.
So the bill that never passed was out of the Senate, actually. A man I respect greatly, Senator Grow. And he had a bill that was Senate Bill 1075 that added 4.5% from our sales tax that has been paid into the state, that it would go back to the people in terms of a property tax credit. And this was, it was fairly simple and in terms of a property tax bill. And if you have followed it all, I have tried and in a different format than Senator Foreman, but I have tried to get a property tax credit bill to raise our homeowners exemptions. And I understand it shifts the tax to either ag property or to commercial property, and I understand that. However, our home values and many of you don't own homes yet, but your parents do, grandparents do, aunts, uncles. And so when the values have gone up so much faster than the other classifications of property, that's a problem, because then we are skewed. And 70 to 75% of the property taxes are paid on the backs of those of us who own real property. So Senator Groh brought that bill, and it went back and forth between the House and the Senate, and we ended up with House Bill 292 out of that session. And it did some good things, but it didn't go far enough. It hasn't gone far enough. And so I will continue to fight for some either an overhaul of our property tax system, of a bill that is going to give some relief to our taxpayers. It's extremely difficult for us to make ends meet in today's world. And this is something that would really help our senior citizens who are on fixed incomes, and they're crying out saying, I can't be taxed out of my home. When I bought my house, or my husband and I bought our house, we bought this farm ground, and so it's gone up now from $40,000 or $20,000. Now it's up to $500,000, and I can't afford the taxes. So we need to find some ways around that. I'd love to say we can find ways without shifting the tax. I'm not sure, but again, leadership hasn't been real fond of that bill because it does shift the tax. And I'm saying maybe we need to shift the tax just a little bit to equalize and play the big equalizer, because I do think that our that system is way out of whack. Thank you.
So my opinion, as I think of all the bills that we passed some really good bills. But I think that the one that didn't pass that really stood out to me was actually House Bill 497. What 497 did is it actually made it so that you can't serve in two different offices at the same time. You can't be a legislator and serve in your city council at the same time. There's a conflict of interest there. I think that you're not putting enough dedication into one of the roles, or both. And so I think that was probably the one that I wish would have passed the most. Just because it would have put people in office that are actually worrying about their job and doing what they're supposed to be doing, and not worrying about splitting the time between the two different ones. So I would probably say that one's the one.
All right. And then the next question, again, starting with Senator Foreman. If you are reelected, what is a bill that you would propose and why?
Okay. I have a protocol that I follow when I'm considering bringing forth new legislation. Step one is I ask myself, is this bill moral? Does it violate God's law? If it does violate God's law, then I'm done right there. Step two, next question I ask myself, in keeping with my protocol, is the bill constitutional? Again, if it's not constitutional, I'm done with it right there. The third question I ask is, will this bill benefit the entire state of Idaho and not just my district? Or will this bill put part of Idaho at a disadvantage? So it's got to be moral, constitutional, and benefit the whole state. So the bill I'm going to bring back is the one I mentioned last time I had this microphone in my hand, was my pro-life bill. I'm going to beat on the door again to try to save the lives of the innocent unborn. That's job one with me, because my overarching concern and obligation as a state senator is to protect the God-given rights of the people of Idaho. And it's hard to exercise your God-given rights if you're dead. The other elements of the Bill of Rights, everything in the Bill of Rights, is kind of moot if you're not around to state your case and stand up for yourself. And I don't want to beat on the same drum here too much, but it just amazes me how good, decent, accomplished, educated people, which our legislators are. They're some of the finest people I've ever worked with. Smart, very well accomplished. How they can sit on the seat of power where with the stroke of a pen, they could eliminate this atrocity from our society, and they turn their backs on the opportunity. I just, I guess it's a sign of the times. But we need to wake up. In case you haven't noticed, your world isn't functioning as well as it should. And it's not because of foreign influence or an act of the Almighty or the weather or anything else. It's because of us. We've stopped trying to live a good, moral, decent life. And when you make laws for the entire state, that better be priority one with you. If not, you'll make bad law. And we can't afford that anymore. It's time for America to kind of pull herself up by the bootstraps and get back to the Judeo-Christian moral basics upon which this country is based. And we're running out of time to do it.
So I have several in the hopper, but again, I'm going to stay on the same drum that I'm beating, and that is for property tax relief. And so the bill that I've been working on, and I've been working with the State Tax Commission, is that it says, okay, so in Lewiston or Nez Perce County, the median value of a home is $350,000. But the median value up in Latah County is different. The median value in Blaine County, down by Sun Valley, obviously is substantially different. So we have an Idaho Constitution that says we have a uniformity issue that we have to tax everyone the same. So I've been thinking that, okay, I keep bringing the same bill. I keep banging my head against the wall, and nobody wants to deal with it. So I thought, what is the definition of that? Well, that would be stupidity to continue bringing the same bill and not making some changes to try to make a difference. So what I am proposing this time is that every county has the ability to charge a homeowner's exemption based upon their median value of their homes. So on the $350,000 in Nez Perce County, it would be a value of up to $140,000 would be the amount that they could use as a homeowner's exemption in Nez Perce County. Now, if your home isn't worth or valued at that amount, then it would go back and revert back to the original bill that is in place, that it's either 50% of the amount of your property or $125,000. And so if those of us who have properties, but if they're not over that amount, then we are not going to get less. But if we have a higher amount, we certainly might be able to get more. And if those of you who own homes realize that they took away the ability to change based upon the values of our homes. So I'm taking another stab at looking at this a little bit differently. So each county can make that determination. Now, what we'll have to do, though, is make sure everybody is basing their median values and figuring those on the same standard. So we have a little work to do on that, but I've talked with the State Tax Commission and have had a ruling from them that said this does not break the uniformity rule as long as everybody's going to do this in the same way. So, but somebody on the edge of Latah County or on the edge of Nez Perce County might not be happy that Latah County might get a little bit more because your home values tend to be higher here than they do in Nez Perce County. So, but that would be where we live, where we decide to live. So, so that's a little different switch on the homeowner's exemption. But again, I am fighting for you, the homeowners, to try to get something. If we can't overhaul the system, then, there's always several ways to skin a cat, as they say. Thanks.
So thank you for the question. Like I said, when I first got in, it was about voting laws. And so I'm still working on some more of those. I've talked to a lot of our county clerks. Our county clerks have a problem with the timeline of when they have to have certain things done. And so they've asked me to try and work on the timeline so that we can actually, it makes it easier for them to actually get the ballots out for the absentee ballots. And so that's one of the things that I'm really working on that side of things. But on the same aspect, something came up this year that's got me a little bit concerned, and I don't know how to address it yet, but we're going to work on it and see if we can address it. We had someone that has lived in Canada for 29 years. Because our law says if you have an intent to come back, you can still register to vote here. And so because that intent is still there. So I don't know how we fix that yet, but that's something that I'm going to look into is how do we correct that? Because if they've been in Canada for 29 years, then they're probably not coming back. When we actually, I guess when our county clerk actually did some research on it, the house that he was using for his address here flooded out years ago and has been torn down. And so that one she did not approve because of that. But that's a concern that I have. If we've got people, she said that we've got people from China that are actually trying to register to vote here because they're American citizens and they're planning on coming back. But if they've been gone for a certain amount of time, I think that has something to do with the Constitution. So it may have to be a constitutional amendment we send out, but it's something that we're going to work on and see if we can't figure out a way to protect that.
Our fourth question has a little bit of a preface. Last year, the legislature set aside an additional $330 million for public schools, which is a 16.4% increase in state funding. Yet, according to the Moscow Pullman Daily News, students' math and English scores fell far short of historical goals for the state. This is a pattern of increasing funding, which correlates with decreasing proficiency. What do you propose as a solution to this discrepancy?
It's a good question. I like that question. It's gets to the heart of something that's been on my mind for a long time. You know, if you care about something, whatever, you really care about it. If you see problems with whatever it is you care about, do you turn your back and walk away? Or do you try to fix the problems because you really care about whatever that is? Whether it's a loved one, whether it's your job, or public education. Now, the legislature has bent over backwards to increase funding for public education. Okay, in and of itself, that's probably a good thing. But we've been kicking the can down the road for years with respect to public education. I just read the latest statistics on the academic performance of our public schools. About 1/3 of our students are meeting national standards, 1/3. Now, why is that? We've been writing checks and saying, here, take the money, don't bother me anymore, come back next year. And next year we give them a bigger check. There's no nexus at this point between increased spending and better performance. So why is that? Well, I made a list. All of society's problems find their way into our public schools at one time or another. Drugs in the schools, lack of discipline for fear of lawsuits, parents who use schools as daycare facilities, federal government intrusion, the gender-related programs, the restroom-related programs. Apparently, people can't figure out which restroom to use these days. Sponsored largely by the federal government and their big fat checkbook. If you take their money, you take their restrictions. Pornography in our schools, and yes, we have it. I've seen it. Teachers, some of them who aren't really qualified to teach, and all the societal issues. So what do? We need to put a task force together that's going to stop kicking the can down the road. We're going to have to solicit input from the students, from the parents, from the teachers, from all the stakeholders. We're going to have to get together, bite the bullet, and really come up with solutions, and we need to leave our checkbooks at home.
So those of you who know me know that I am a champion of public education. I've had two parents I had two parents, the only two, but my parents both were public educators. My brother is a public educator. I taught at LCSE. So education is a passion for me from early learning up to higher ed. Some of the things, and I'm going to take a little different look at this, because when I as a state, we need to do better overall as a state. Now, our NAEP scores have come up substantially, and I don't have the privy to know what article we are citing here out of the Moscow Daily News, but I can tell you that overall, with all students added together, Troy is at 71.4%, Genesee 71.1%, Moscow 70%, and this is proficiency on English and language arts. When we look at traditional schools only, and we take out some of the other schools, like some of the really good charter schools, Moscow is at 78.9%. Lewiston in their IRI, which is the indicator for reading, and their scores have gone up from the kindergarten kids up to fourth grade. They are up into the 86, 87%. And so, folks, we're doing some good things in District 6. And quite honestly, being negative about our system is not going to fix it. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. For 8 years, we didn't make a lot of changes under the last superintendent, but I can tell you, Debbie Critchfield is a champion. She is not going to stop till she fixes these problems. I believe strongly that we need to give our districts the tools that they need to make better decisions so that they are not worried about being sued. Last year, I sponsored a bill with Marco Erickson that we allowed our teachers to go in and physically remove a student because what was happening is they were afraid to touch a student. And we said, that is not what we are talking about here, folks. We had a bill on corporal punishment that's not allowed and so on and so forth. However, they were afraid to remove a student, so they let everybody else leave the classroom while one student destroys it. I said, that is not what we are about here. So we fixed it. And so we need to give them, the teachers and the administrations, the tools to say, no, girls, you go to the girls' bathroom, boys, you go to the boys' bathroom. If you don't know what you are, here's just a joint bathroom, and go ahead and use the family bathroom. So really quickly, McDonald Elementary up here, 76.7%. Stop? Oh, thank you. So anyway, it's time to stop, but I could go on and on. Thank you.
Oh, so this is a really good question. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've actually sent about $1.4 to $1.5 billion more to our education system. My concern is when I talk to educators that are in higher ed, and they tell me, I'm getting kids here that have a 9th grade reading level out of high school. And so I've got a big concern with that. Now, the funding, we need to fund it. It's constitutional mandate that we have to fund our K through 12. I get that side of things. But what my focus is, and my goal over the last several years, and I'm still continuing to work on that, is let's get back to the core. Let's get back to basics. Let's focus our studies on our reading, writing, arithmetic, history, science. Let's focus on the basics. And then let's add some classes that will actually give these kids something when they come out of high school. There's no reason we can't have a kid coming out of high school with a certification in plumbing, certification in electricity, having someone that's in culinary. We can have these kids coming out of high school, and if they decide to go on to college, that's great. But if they don't, they've got a marketable skill that they could actually fall back on. So that's been my driving force over the last couple years, and I'm going to continue to drive that further forward. We've got some great schools, but what we're seeing at the college level is we're not getting the results that we need. I want to make sure that when our kids are graduating, it's the quality of the graduate, not the quantity of the graduates.
Thank you. And we just have one final question concerning Proposition 1, also known as ranked choice voting, open primaries, or jungle primaries. What is your stance on Proposition 1 and why?
I don't like Proposition 1. I'm going to vote no on it. It's nothing more than a scheme to upset the traditional method of voting that we've had in this country for forever. One person, one vote, which clearly represents the will of the people. 75% or more of the funding for Prop 1 comes from out of state. Yet this bill will affect Idahoans. They should keep their out-of-state money in whatever state they're in and let Idahoans fund the efforts to make changes in the political world. I made a list of things here that I don't like about Proposition 1. First of all, the way they advertised it was very disingenuous. They don't even talk about ranked choice voting. They talk about open primaries, open primaries. If I see one more open primaries ad, I think I'm going to go nuts. But yet they don't ever mention the second half of that, which is ranked choice voting. Our Attorney General brought a lawsuit in the state Supreme Court to try to split this into two proposals, but that didn't make it. It cuts out the party concept. I'm a Republican because I believe in the Republican Charter, the platform. It's a beautiful document. I don't want people signing up to run in the primary calling themselves Republicans when they're really Democrats or whatever. And they can do that under this proposal. With this system, using their algorithms to come up with a final result, you can be the third or fourth place vote getter and wind up winning the election. How does that represent the will of the people? That's pure nonsense. And if I'm running for office, because I have to pick 4 candidates and rank them 1 through 4, I have to vote for my opponent. I don't want to vote for my opponent. That's silly, absolute silliness. And if you don't fill out 4 choices after the first round of tallies, your ballot is tossed out and you don't participate from that point on. So what they're doing is they're trying to move the goalpost. The people on the far left have an ideology and a platform that Idahoans have rejected. They can't win in a straight toe-to-toe, one person, one vote contest. So they're trying to change the rules in a very slippery way in order to increase the odds of getting their far left people into office. It's very disingenuous. It would turn Idaho blue. We're red and we're going to stay red. I recommend you vote no on this very disingenuous bill crafted out of state.
So my take on Prop 1 is, and I have not come out as opposed or against, and I'm going to tell you why, because normally, and I've been censured because of my stance on different votes, because I represent you, the people. It's we, the people, of, by, and for the people. And so do I love everything about this? No, I do not. But I feel like if the people of the state of Idaho are saying, I do not like the way this vote is happening. I don't think it's right that 270,000 people in the state have to choose. And they say, I am independent. I vote for the person. I don't want to have to affiliate with the Republicans, or I don't want to affiliate with the Democrats. Therefore, I want an open primary so I can vote for the person I think is going to represent me the best. And so I am listening to the people. And I will come, I know where I'm going to vote, but my little vote, does that really make a difference? To you, to me, I think that I want to listen to what you all have to say. And if you decide and the state comes back and says, we need a change, then we need to figure out what's going to work for Idaho. Ranked choice might not be the answer. And I very well could get on board with that. But if we need to open our primaries and do it in the right way, then maybe we need to relook at that. If the people are saying, this is not it's not working for us in the state of Idaho. So if it comes out and we've already had legislators who have said 100%, I'm going to vote to repeal it. I don't think that that's what we as representatives, because we represent you, and we should listen to what you have to say in every instance. We are, yes, a republic. We represent the people. And so that's what I plan to do. And I will take that back. Just like I do in all the bills, I listen. I get letters from students all the time out of Moscow High School, from college students, from members of Latah County, from all over the district. And I try very hard. It's one of the things that I love the most, and that is talking to the people and trying to understand what it is that you want us to do. And so on this issue, that's where I am, and I will listen to you.
So thank you for the question. And any of you that have been around watching know that I'm opposed to it. And I'm opposed to it for several different reasons. I understand the open primary part. And Senator Foreman explained it very well. I've been keeping every flyer that I've been getting, and it talks about the open primaries. Talks about the open primaries. And I read through it, and I'm going, where's it talk about ranked choice voting? Why are they not talking about this part? If this is so good, why are they not sharing that with everybody? I don't like open primaries personally, but I get there's a lot of people that do like them. The reason I don't like open primaries, especially this one, is because it's not a real open primary. A real open primary is me as a Republican. I walk in and I say, I would like the Democrat ballot. That's an open primary. This is what they call a blanket primary. Everyone's on the ballot. So it would be like having, well, the analogy that I like to use is Lewiston High's students are picking Moscow High's football quarterback. So I'm not in favor of open primaries, but the ranked choice voting is the problem in it all. And like I said, they are hiding it so much. And we are seeing tons of money being dumped in. There's been a lot of people out there talking about, oh, look at all this out-of-state money coming in against whoever. These guys, they've got like 4.4 million have come in favor of it from out of state. And we've got 1 million from in-state. Why are the other states trying to change Idaho? So I'm completely opposed to it. I think that it's a big problem. I'm recommending a vote no to everyone that I talk to because I think that it's not what Idaho needs. So that's where I stand on that.
Thank you all for coming. Candidates and panelists, you are now dismissed to the reception at the Peoria and Art Gallery. But before they go, let's thank our representatives and senator for coming and speaking with us.